Hey girl, hey! Welcome back. So glad you're back. Y'all, would you believe this? But I met with my mom and it went way better than I could have even fathomed in my brain, could have prayed for, could have anything. Um, Let me apologize now. I'm a little toasty and I don't have my fan in here, so I had to crack the window a little bit, and you can hear a little bit of highway noise sometimes. So, working on a mic, it's not priority at this minute, but maybe it is. Who knows? We'll see. I digress. Yes. So last video I talked about some mom trauma, working through some mom trauma. And I shared that I was on no contact with my mom. So last December, I decided that I didn't want to go to Christmas at mom's anymore. And so I texted her and I told her I wasn't coming. And then I blocked her because I didn't want to be like talked out of it or what have you. And it's what I thought was safest for me in that moment. And then I unblocked her, and then over time I was like, well, I don't want mom to think I don't love her, because I do love her. I just am learning to love myself a little more, and I have to put a little space in between it now, because yeah. So anyway, so I haven't talked to my mom. I would just randomly occasionally tell her I loved her. And then something prompted me, I'm not going to say something. God prompted me to call mom and tell her I loved her. So I was like, so I decided to go ahead and just call her, tell her I loved her. It was a difficult conversation, not for any other reason than it was the first time that I had talked to her. And at that time, it probably had been at least 8 months. And afterwards, I cried and I reminded myself that I was safe and that I was okay and that all of the things. And, I had every intention of, when I would tell these stories, I feel like I was gonna talk about him in a negative kind of light, because I still had some malice. Because I didn't think that my mom understood what she had done to us when we were younger. And even though I understand why my mom is I understand why my mom did the things that she did, and I truly believe that she did the best with the information that she was given. And, the more I heal and the more I understand, the more I also realize that what happened to her, what happened to her in her first 6 years, where I don't have to know the nitty gritty, but I am aware enough to know that she had a intimate relationship with someone that she shouldn't have, and they took advantage of her and abused her, and this person is supposed to protect you. And when these things happen to you at a young age, it plays a role in your development. And if you don't really know about it, or if you blocked it out, all of those things. And also you perpetuate the trauma, because not only do I have my mom's trauma, but I also have my grandmother's trauma and my great grandmother's trauma, because it's just generational trauma and things that we are passing down to one another. And just for for so many different reasons. I mean, definitely getting help and going to therapy and things like that is not a common, it was not the thing you did in the Black community back in the day. That was mainly made for those who had more money and more, I'm just going to say it. It was literally built for the upper class white individuals. And so a lot of the interventions, it wasn't made for the BIPOC population, period. But most of the people, when you saw the videos on, like, you know, when they would advertise it, it was always, a lot of times it was like, it looked like a middle-aged white man sitting in a chair with a notebook, and you were laying on his couch. And like, who wants to do that? I don't want to do that. And so we have this misconception of what therapy is, and oh, you need help, oh, you just pray. Yes, also pray. Don't get me wrong. I pray. And also, I go to therapy. And also, I take an antidepressant. I still gotta, you know, do all the things. So, anyway, so my mom is carrying all this trauma. She's not really realizing or working through this trauma. And to be honest, I really did not, when I went into this conversation, sorry, let me back up. Let me act like I didn't say those words. My bad. My mom texted me and asked me, this was about a week or so ago, and asked me if we could go somewhere and meet. And I said, I took a minute to respond. And let me tell you, that was hard. That was hard for a lot of reasons, because like, I didn't know what I wanted to say. I didn't know. I just didn't know. So after talking with my people, I was like, mainly, I prayed on it a lot, because I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. The holidays are coming up, yada, yada. So, and basically this is a recap of the last message with some more details in it as well. But I decided to go and meet with my mom, and I was anxious, and I was very thankful. I had therapy, and in my therapy, we discussed, she said, what does a safety plan look like for you for this? And I cried, because I was like, man, I have to create a safety plan, because I'm about to go into an environment that has the potential to be mentally unsafe for me. So I kind of cried, because, you know, it's sad to think about it in those terms. And so as I'm processing that and thinking about the fact that I have a choice, and that I can leave, and that I'm an adult, and all of these things that my brain sometimes seems to forget. I'm talking with my cousin, you know, a couple of days before I meet with mom, and he reminds me to change my language. He says, we got to work on our wording, because if I say I have to create the safety plan, it still puts it in my brain that I don't have a choice. But I have a choice. I get to create a safety plan because I am aware that I'm going into a potentially harmful environment for my mental health. And not only do I get to do it, but I get to choose the people that I have a part of that. And I am thankful that I have some pretty amazing people that God has put in my life. So I reached out to those people, I sent Marco Polos, I text them, but most importantly, I literally I prayed. I did a lot of praying that I would go into this, because one of the things that I thought about is when my ex and I were trying to figure out, I remember saying to him, I can't compete with old me. And so if all you're going to do is see old me, old Devynne, then we aren't going to be able to figure out how to make this work, because that's not who I'm trying to be, but if that's all you see. And so I didn't want to go into this interaction with my mom immediately thinking old mom, like this old version of her. And I didn't know how to do that. Like I didn't. I got there and it was a little awkward at first. And then it kind of switched. You know, there were some things that she was saying where I felt my heart racing a little bit, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is where she's at, blah, 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 blah. And then I had to remind myself, you can just listen. You don't have to respond. Like, we always feel like we have to respond to things, but we really don't. So I didn't respond. I just listened. I showed that I was engaged, but I didn't verbally respond. Because we don't always have to have an opinion or a thought to everything that somebody says. And I think we know this, but sometimes maybe it's like an awkward situation and we're like, ah. Anyway. So then she just kind of, as she's talking and she's telling me stuff, she kind of says, you know, I don't know how we got here. And you guys, for the first time in my entire life, I was like, oh, well, so I had an adult conversation with my mother. I said we got here because I've really been working on myself, and I have given you too much power. I have allowed you to have too much power over my life. And she started to interrupt, and because I know, like, I will get sidetracked so easily, I was like, can we try to you finish, I finish, like, then, because I don't want to, like, I'm trying to focus, okay? And so I was like, I did what I thought I needed to, I did what I needed to do, and the way I did it in the safest way that I thought possible for me. And I was like, it's hard because, you know, I had to use this time to figure out how to not give you this power, and to also, when we're talking, it feels like I'm a child, and I'm not a child. I am your child, but I'm almost 40. I have my own life. I have my own family. Like, I'm grown. And yeah, and it was crazy. And so then we obviously, we talked about a lot of things, and you know, it was crazy because I found myself just reassuring her, like, you knew, you can't fault yourself for not knowing what you didn't know. And now that you know what you know, as far as her own life, she apologized. She recognizes, and, you know, she feels that she would have gotten help had she had known things previously in her life. And I'm like, but you don't know that. You would like to think that, you would like to believe that your younger self would have had enough, I don't know what the word is, because self-preservation is not the word that I'm really looking for. Enough something to want to get help, but also you don't know. So what would, maybe back in the day, learning more of this information that you've learned now would have caused you to go into a deeper, less productive way. And it was interesting because, you guys, when I went in, I had no intentions of telling her that I forgave her. It felt right. It felt real. It felt like this crazy, like as I'm listening to her tell the story, tell how I feel, and her share, a little bit about her story, even though what I knew was pretty much enough. I didn't need to know. I even shared, I know that the first 6 years of your life, I don't need to know nitty gritty details, but the first 6 years were really kind of crappy for you. And the more, I said it a lot more aggressive than that though, but try to keep it a little PG. But, and I was like, you don't, as I'm doing research for my own self, it's important to think about and to like change our thinking into not like, oh, not what's wrong with you, what happened to you. And so if I change my thought process, what happened to mom? Well, I know what happened to my mom for the first 5 years of her life. I know what happened to her. And so if our development and our resiliency and our emotional regulation and those things are so important in the first few months and few years of your life, and that is completely just turned upside down, well, of course you're going to act the way that you do. It's natural. And I did the same thing. I am just blessed enough to see it before. I'm just blessed enough to see it now. And, to own my own role, in my own happiness, because that is literally what I've been doing is fighting and figuring out, okay, like, all right, yeah, we talk about all the things that like my mom did or my ex did, but like, what did I do? What did I not do? What did I perpetuate? And so as I really think about those things, it's easy to switch my brain power and thinking of, okay, well, what did you do? Okay, well, what happened to you? Well, what happened to me is X, Y, and Z. And so because of these things that happened to me, I did this. Doesn't make it right, doesn't make it wrong, just makes it, okay, now I understand, now I need to readjust. And if I want to do something different, then now I have a little bit more information to do something different. And maybe I don't know what happened to me entirely. We all don't necessarily remember everything that happened to us. But what I do know is we got to give ourselves some grace. And I don't know about y'all, but sometimes it's really hard when we realize we've just really effed up. Like, we just messed up bad. And maybe we messed up with our kids or our spouses or whatever the situation is. But when we look back, we're like, ooh, ooh. Because y'all, as I like think back, I know this is about my mom and we're not going to go into my ex right now, but like as I think about processing and sharing this stuff about my ex, y'all, I really don't want to share some of it because I look back at myself and I'm like, oh, this is so cringe. This is so cringe. But I'm going to do it anyway. And I'm going to share it because you're only as sick as your secrets. And it's nothing bad, but it's just, we don't like looking at ourselves sometimes in a negative light. And definitely in my marriage, there are a lot of times where I need to look at myself in a negative light and be like, Lord Jesus. No wonder I'm divorced. In all seriousness, I'm not making light of the divorce. I understand. I understand why I'm where I'm at, and I understand that everything happens the way that it is supposed to happen to make us the people that we are supposed to be. And, you know, as I was talking with my mom, I said those things. I was like, as much as that stuff sucks, everything you went through made you. She was like, God orchestrated my life. And I was like, no, but for real, he really did. He really does. He orchestrated everything so that we could be right here, right now, having this conversation. And I was like, me taking that time and working on myself, that is what doing the work is. That is what has allowed us to be able to have this conversation today. And I'm glad we ended it on a really good note. She would like to continue to have, a relationship. I'm not delusional that everything is going to be sunshine and rainbows and unicorns, because we're both still human and we're both still working on our own trauma. She's getting help for her trauma. I'm getting help for my trauma. And, who knows what it'll bring. I never would have expected this to be the video that I was posting when I was going to come in and talk about my first interaction with my mom. And I haven't seen her in over a year, or haven't talked to her on the phone in 9-10 months. So, I did not anticipate her doing the work. And that's the thing, is we have to be able to give grace, because we don't know if somebody's doing the work. We don't know if they're making the efforts and they're doing the things, and it's just really hard to undo all of those years of trauma. So if I have all these years of trauma, she's got 25 more years, like age-wise, of trauma. And then she's still got, we're not even going to go back into the generational stuff. So if you don't get anything out of this, what I hope you get is to give yourself some grace, to own your own role in your happiness, to clean your side of the street, to trust in a higher power to help you get through crazy situations. For me, it's God. I'm thankful for God, and I'm grateful for the people that he puts in my life, and and the love and reminding, as I left my mom, I Marco Polo'd my cousin, and I was just telling him about it and how well it went. And I didn't cry the whole time. My mom was crying. I didn't cry the whole time. And I didn't feel the need. I felt calm. I felt at peace. I felt whatever. And then all of a sudden, as I go to tell him about, I was like, and I'm just so grateful. And I just broke down, because I was like, and I'm so loved. I am loved by God. I am loved by my family and my friends. I am loved. And it's sometimes hard to remember that, especially when we get in our heads too much. So if you don't remember anything else I say today, please just remember, you are loved. You are beautiful. You are amazing, and you are enough just the way you are. Bye.